There are 1,000,000 ways to die. We just wanna talk about it. Codeheads.
Well, here we are, the two co-heads back together again.
Yeah, episode 5. I mean, it's episode 4 because we had 2 parts on the previous, but number 5.
Yeah, we're nailing
Here we go. We're in it.
We are. It's big news. And actually, bigger news is that this is our first deep dive into one of the guideline recommendations for the American Heart Association.
Mm-hmm.
So today, it's close to near and dear to my heart, but also Mike loves it too, is the double sequential external defibrillation, also known as DSED. And it's a big topic. So, and there's a lot of feelings about it. So what I want to do is just take a step back. So for those of you who might be listening that are not sure what DSED is, what double sequential external defibrillation is, we're going to get into that. But really, in general, I want to jump back to the basics. So the difference, and I think most of us know that the difference between a heart attack and sudden cardiac arrest is that a heart attack is a pump issue with the heart. There's no blood flowing through for some reason. So there's a pump that needs to be cleared out. It's a plumbing issue, if you will. Whereas when you go into sudden cardiac arrest, it's more of an electrical issue in the heart. So there's no electricity. And all of a sudden it's like someone's pulled the plug and boom, you're down. Whereas with plumbing, there's a clog that kind of builds up over time. And then eventually you got to plunge the toilet. So that's the main difference. So when there's an electrical issue, so when you have sudden cardiac arrest, which is what most of our talks are going to be surrounding, and basically the entire podcast is surrounding sudden cardiac arrest. So it's an electrical issue, which means that for 2 of the major rhythms, VFib and VTAC, ventricular fibrillation and ventricular tachycardia, you need electricity. That's the only thing that's going to restart the heart. And it is the only thing besides, good compressions and creating circulation for the heart that time and time again has been proven in research effective to restart the heart and get them out of that rhythm that has, caused them to malfunction electrically.
Right. So when someone does go into arrest secondary to because of an MI, which is a heart attack, myocardial infarction, if they present with one of those 2 shockable rhythms, which you just cited, that's good news in terms of if we have the AED ready to be deployed. However, if we do not, as each minute goes, each minute passes, we lose the likelihood of obtaining return of spontaneous circulation, which is why every single class emphasizes early CPR and early AED, because compressions alone on these folks dealing with an electrical conduction issue will not bring them back alone.
It helps to keep their brain intact. It helps.
Right. It's repairing the myocyte for defibrillation. It's absolutely essential. It'll work toward the good neurological outcome, not dismissing it. I'm saying, the 2 in conjunction critical. And if it happens right in front of you and you get right on that, boom. Good shot. Good shot.
Yeah. So that brings us to today, just to kind of set the background, why electricity is really helpful. And so I don't know if you want to kind of take it from here, but double sequential external defibrillation is basically when we use 2 different defibrillators to give shocks. So we know that an AED is a defibrillator, an automated external defibrillator. And so when you use that in public, it will usually, when you see those, they have doses of electricity that they kind of escalate, 200, 300, 360. They'll escalate to give more energy. And some of them just stay at 200, but doesn't really matter. It tells you what to do as a layperson. You're going to put it on a patient and then boom, shock. When you get into the hospital or, with EMS, we have more, intense, more better defibrillators that we can actually manually override and run. So which is really helpful because we can, kind of change the amount of electricity that we're giving and, the dosage, the rate, et cetera.
Yeah, we could customize the resuscitation attempt to that patient in their specific predicament. Correct. By having that manual control.
It's like going to Starbucks and customizing your coffee. We can do that with different.
It is just like that.
A double shot. Well, and this is a double shot of espresso. This is exactly what.
Yes. You could think of it that way, certainly.
So I'll let Mike take it from here.
Okay. So this is such a large topic and it integrates other topics within it. Okay. We could talk about vector and vector change in a bit, but it's entirely related to double sequential external defibrillation. But I don't want to jump there yet. So currently, and if we talk about the American Heart Association guidelines, just like with an AED, you have your pads and it tells you where to place them. There's pictures. All right. So we put 2 pads on that patient. Now let's take it to the advanced level. We still have 2 pads on that patient and we're going to control the joule delivery as you stated. And every 2 minutes, we're going to do a pulse and rhythm check. And if they remain in that shockable rhythm, VTAC or VFib, we will shock those patients. And we will shock these patients until they're not shockable.
Until the cows come home.
Right? We'll shock until we can't shock anymore. Now, what we were talking about, and it's funny, all of our episodes kind of overlap a bit, which is good. Our first one was about the every 2 minutes, questioning the every 2 minutes. So let's just stick with that for now, though. Every 2 minutes, we do a pulse and rhythm check. So we were saying after 6 minutes and we get to our third shock, we're still shocking. They're not coming out of this dysrhythmia. That's called a refractory VFib. So after the third shock, most people will consider that refractory VFib. In other words, it's not going away.
Yeah, you're staying with them for a minute.
And in one time in my experience, I think we did 10 shocks on someone. Didn't go away. And they ended up, unfortunately, expiring. But that's 10 shocks with the same rhythm, giving the same meds, doing the same thing.
And the same amount of electricity at that point.
Same, because we capped out. There's a maximum you can give.
And depending on what device you use. Some devices max out at 200 joules and some max out at 360.
Right.
So this is where it comes into play that, I always say in life that more isn't always better. However, with DSED, I think more is better because we know that electricity is the only thing that's going to get these people out of the rhythm that is causing them to be in this sudden cardiac arrest. So they're essentially, for all intents and purposes, they are dead. And we're using electricity to make them undead at a very basic level. And so if we're giving them these certain amounts of electricity, the theory behind DSED is, well, let's hit it from a different angle. So we have pads in, one location, right?
So we have just 4 pads on the patient now versus
now let's
2.
put a second set of pads. Yeah. So there's, pads on the front and back, and then on your upper right side, and then on your kind of mid left side. Sorry, I'm not good at rights and lefts. Anywho, so now we have the 4 pads on the patient. And so we're going to give defibrillations from both of the different monitors at the same exact time. So we're going to give literally a double dose of electricity. And that's where the controversy is, really, because I'm going to say that it has been shown in certain studies to be effective.
Mm-hmm. Very effective in those certain studies.
Exceedingly effective.
Yes.
And it has shown to improve survival to hospital discharge, right? So not only to get people out of that rhythm, but to also, increase their survivability of this event. And that's huge because that's
the end game.
Correct. That's the end game. And sometimes when we talk about different statistics, and this is obviously for the, the non resuscitation specialist that we're just speaking to, or professional, the lay people here, there's different statistics, and one statistic is just getting somebody out of a rhythm. So getting them back to where their heart is working on its own. So ROSC, return of spontaneous circulation. That means their heart's beating on their own. So that's great. That's a save. However, then you have to look at, did we get a save there? So their neurological outcome, and then the survivability of the event. So did they leave the hospital like neurologically intact and their heart working? Great. And then we also look at survivability as like the 1 year out from that as well. So there's a lot of different statistics to look at. And obviously the initial statistic that people usually kind of throw at you is the initial survivability of responding and coming out of whatever arrhythmia you're in. So just to kind of give that background. So it's important to think about that in the studies that they've done for the DSED, is that they've found that they have had conversion out of these arrhythmias. So at much higher rates than standard defibrillations.
Yes.
And they've also shown an improvement in survivability to hospital discharge with neurologic intact. And neurologically intact. Maybe I'm not neurologically intact today, but that's huge, because that means that you're basically walking out of the hospital way better than you walked in, and before this event even occurred. You're basically wow, I had this horrible thing happen and now I'm great. And that's the ideal state of what we want. So where this comes into controversy, and
could I just interject prior to the controversy? Sure. I just, again, want to emphasize just one thing. So the good neurological outcome is based on the perfusion that we're providing by CPR, highly effective CPR, right? So we're trying to get them out of this dysrhythmia at the same time as providing the CPR, because that's going to enable the good neurological outcome. With DSED, and then it'll segue nice, with DSED, with the 4 sets of pads, we might be getting them out of VFib sooner than later, which means when they get pulses back, it's not after the 6th shock when I'm 12 minutes into the code, where CPR starts to go down if it's manual. It just does, especially pre-hospital. So if I could get them out sooner than later from VFib, which DSED, in my opinion, can do, I have the numbers here, which I'll talk about later, then that also enables that good neurological outcome, because that's the key, the good neurological outcome.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up.
That's what we want to see.
Correct, and I totally breezed over that point.
No, I just want to get into it a bit more.
Well, great. I'm leaning in, baby. And continuing to lean. And before, I say we know that Mike loves DSED. I do want to say a bit of the controversy. So the American Heart Association guidelines are not encouraging the use of DSED. And
May I quote that? Can I quote the 3 lines that the AHA states?
I encourage that.
Put my focals on.
AHA, I encourage that.
So 2025 update. I'm just going to give you the 3 lines. The usefulness of double sequential defibrillation for adults in cardiac arrest with persisting VFib pulseless VTAC after 3 or more consecutive shocks has not been established.
And that is my outrage.
That's a big word. Those last 3 has not been established, because I will share about how it has been established in some places. And like you said, I'm a fanboy, but I'm also measured about it. I understand not many studies are out there. In fact, pretty much one, and there's another one ongoing. But that's the AHA's take on it, and that's pretty.
And we've talked about this,
right?
We need to innovate in medicine, because we're looking and doing the same thing over and over again with defibrillation and with different things with sudden cardiac arrest. We're just basically banging our head against the wall. We're doing the same things, or making small tweaks and anticipating that we're going to get some major changes, and that all of a sudden survivability is going to change it. But it's unlike other areas of medicine where, they come out with this game-changing drug, or, like with cancer, it's like, oh, we've got this new drug, and we've got this, and we've got that. We don't, in resuscitation, we don't really have that. But we do have people that are innovators. So we have people that are looking at, okay, so listen, more is better with this electricity. Let's do it. Let's double down on more is better, right? And let's do this double sequential. Let's do it. So they set up protocols. They go through an IRB. It's an ethical way to, look at how to use basically MacGyvering what we have on hand and to try and improve outcomes for patients, right? They're not trying to create something new and go back and like make some like mega defibrillator. Like they're like, okay, so this is how the heart works. And they're using the science and, anatomy and basic science and basic, principles of how defibrillation works and making it better and more effective for patients. And they've shown that there's, positive outcomes in some of these trials, but I'm wondering here if the controversy and the reason that the AHA is not supporting it and it's saying it hasn't been proven is because technically utilizing two devices at the same time is off-label. So it's not, the devices are not approved from what I can tell through the FDA to be used at the same time. Now, does that mean that we can't do that? No, there's different medications we use all the time off label. Like there's all sorts of things that are done off label because that's how, again, we innovate. We try something, great example, people using Ozempic for weight loss. It wasn't really intended for that. It was for management of, or other GLP-1s. I shouldn't use trade names, but using that for, management of their diabetes type 2. But side effects, people have lost weight, so they use them. Same thing with DSED. Our defibrillators aren't approved to be used with more than one at a time. However, they have been doing it and they've been doing it successfully. And it does take some time for those, like, the wheels of justice or whatever for the FDA to like look. We have to get enough studies and enough information and data to give to them to say, hey, look, and then for them to approve. And this is a gross, underrepresentation of getting FDA approval, but you have to give them enough volume of data for them to then approve devices for said use.
Right. And that's a relevant point because we're digging underneath about what has not been established. And I don't think a lot of people are thinking about that aspect of it in particular.
Right.
About, I'm aware of it, but I'm not like, that wasn't sort of my focus or my thought process when I said it's been established. When I say it's been established, I am ignoring what you just said.
Correct. No, and I agree with you because, and that's the reason why, all these people were really outraged when it came out because, it feels like they're saying, no, clinically it's not effective. And I don't believe that. I read the research and I believe in science and I believe what I saw. Like, I think it is effective. I am wondering, however, again, I think that all these things could have been reworded and worded differently because my thought process is that maybe they're probably saying they can't stand behind it. And they're saying it's not effective because it's not FDA approved. But that doesn't mean it's not effective. So maybe the verbiage should have been changed because if you're already doing it and it's working and you see positive outcomes, keep going.
Keep going.
Because build the data, build it so it can come and become a guideline in the next 5 years.
And we've been focusing on language since these guidelines have come out.
Right.
Because it's so important because people will just see those words and then there's the, visceral reaction, there's the immediate reaction. And there are other factors involved in whether you agree with them or not. This is why it is phrased as it is, which I think it could totally be improved. And with DSED, I got 2 examples where I want to change the word, and I'll explain why, probably on part 2, but it's to me, it's a really just has not been established. It's like, wow, we really need some what's underneath there.
Right.
Right.
Cut it off at the knees. And when we start getting into, the different, the different studies and whatnot, like it has been established and it's, honestly,
Yeah.
it's to
It's
me,
been,
it's vibrant. Like that is some great research, and anything that drives the, margin of survivability up for sudden cardiac arrest is huge because
especially at the level that they've shown. It's not a
out of
few
hospital.
people,
Yes. Yeah.
twice. And that's hard to ignore.
Correct.
And the people that have been doing it, like you said, have been doing it for a while. And mostly, interestingly enough, the study we'll talk about, the dose fib trial, it's the pre-hospital arena where they're utilizing it. 4,000 medics, and there were 6 different systems in Ontario. But just as an example, in hospital, I have not heard much about it, and people aren't that aware of it. I swear, because where I work, last night, 2 nights ago, I taught an ACLS class. Very experienced providers. When I said DSED, I just brought it up. Well, after the 3rd shock, you could do this. They looked at me like I was nuts. Because I said, oh, you could put 2 monitors on, and then you could stand here like, oh, badass. Press one button, press the other. Boom. Like, I'm finding just in the classroom, it's not, they weren't aware of it. That surprised me. Or they were just
providers. It's critical care. You have
critical
care.
Or they were just apathetic and didn't want to.
Emergency medicine physicians, and
Yeah. So I'm just saying I was very surprised by that because to me it's top of mind. And 10 years ago, I saw there's a show called Night Watch, and New Orleans EMS were doing it.
Right. Yes.
I was like, what the hell is that? And I'm like, that's pretty cool. Yeah. And so the paramedics love it. They're seeing the improvements, and they resent, and I think that's the right word, is these EMS agencies are resenting the fact that they're being told, or they feel they're being told, it's not established. You know what? They are in the ambulance seeing it's established. They really don't need to read the guidelines to see, because when you get a save, you remember it. And if you're getting more and more, you're like, oh, hell yeah.
And if the data is not only they're seeing it, the save in their truck, but then they're also, there's follow-ups now from EMS to in-hospital, and they're getting the feedback that, yep, this patient survived. They had good neurological output, they walked out of here alive, neurologically intact, and it was a save all around. They're getting that data back, because that's there's a lot of hospital EMS systems, and it used to be that you guys would drop off a patient and then it was like, bye, and you never heard again. And
no, that's how it always was.
Yeah, and now it's different. We give that feedback, and we have those relationships. And so I think next episode, so that we are going to have a part two, and we're going to dig into these studies and talk a little bit more, because I think clinically,
we'll go to the studies.
Effective. We know what the controversy now is with the AHA, and next episode, we're going to get into the nitty gritty with the research and what it shows, and a little more clinical.
One final point.
Yes.
So about it not being established. So there are a lot of recommendations people should know by the AHA that are recommended without a randomized control trial, which is the gold standard. So consistency may appear to lack. And I think that's what's also infuriating people, is not just this DSAD alone, but it's like, hey, why is this being recommended with less, it's so people feel it should have been conditionally recommended versus not established. Again, it's verbiage, but I can understand that frustration.
100%.
Right? Like, it's like, hey, why the hell are we doing that off this one study, which is iffy? And then we have, a decent randomized control trial, and we have an ongoing randomized control trial.
Correct.
And wait until you guys hear these numbers.
I know. Just wait. Get the popcorn.
Just wait. Like, we've been talking it up. Don't believe us. The numbers don't lie. And it's just, and we're going to talk about vectors. We're going to talk about everything.
Forget about it. All right.
Be...
Well, we do know.
Oh yeah, that's right. We do know that.
There are 1 million ways to die. We just wanna talk